believe it is your gift, this sensitivity. You feel it as a light inside you, a sacred warmth that allows you to touch the souls of others. When someone aches, you ache. When someone weeps, you taste salt. This is the seduction of boundless empathy. It arrives as a holy calling, a whisper that you are here to heal, to understand, to hold the pain of the world so that others might feel a moment's peace. But every light, when gazed upon too long, blinds. Every fire, when fed too much fuel, consumes. You have stood in the storm of another's chaos and offered your body as a shield. You have walked into the flooded ruins of their grief and offered your own breath to keep them from drowning. In these moments, you feel a profound sense of purpose, a rightness that seems to transcend the mundane realm of the ego. But what is really happening here? In the silent, unseen depths of the psyche, something far more ancient and dangerous is at play. Carl Jung knew that true empathy is not merely a conscious act of compassion. It is an unconscious merging. It is a dissolution of the psychic barrier that separates you from another. When you feel their sorrow, you are not just understanding it. You are allowing their unconscious to bleed into yours. Their ghosts begin to haunt your inner rooms. Their unresolved anguish settles in your bones. At first, it feels like connection, a beautiful, tragic intimacy. But it is a dangerous form of fusion, a psychological enmeshment where the boundaries of the self are sacrificed at the altar of another's suffering. This offering of the self is rarely acknowledged. The world praises you for it. They call you kind, compassionate, a good friend, an old soul. They admire your capacity to listen, your willingness to stay in the dark with them. But they do not see the cost. They do not see that with every psychic wound you absorb, a piece of your own soul is given away. You become a harbor for ships that never intend to dock, a resting place for sorrows that are not yours to carry. The seduction lies in this illusion of selflessness. You believe you are giving, but you are being emptied. You think you are healing, but you are becoming a vessel for unhealed pain. This is how the gift begins its slow, insidious transformation into a curse. It starts as a flicker of warmth and becomes a wildfire that burns through the foundations of your own psychic home, leaving you hollowed out, exhausted, and wondering why a life of such deep feeling has left you feeling so numb. It is a candle that burns so bright it melts itself. There is a point where empathy ceases to be a bridge and becomes a flood. Jung saw this with a terrifying clarity. He called it identification, not a conscious choice, but an unconscious succumbing, a loss of psychic sovereignty. When you over-identify with another's suffering, you are not merely feeling for them, you are becoming them. Their pain becomes your reality, their narrative overwrites your own, and the stable ground of your ego begins to liquefy. Imagine your soul as a river, with its own current, its own direction, its own sacred purpose. Identification is the moment that river meets an ocean of another's sorrow and, instead of feeding it, simply dissolves into it. The river loses its banks, its form, its name. It is no longer a distinct entity flowing towards its own destiny. It has become a nameless part of the vast, churning chaos of the sea. This is the existential terror that lurks beneath the mask of compassion. You tell yourself this is love, this is connection. But Jung warned that this fusion is a regression, a return to an undifferentiated state where the individual has not yet emerged from the collective. It is a subtle form of self-annihilation, dressed in the noble robes of sacrifice. You become a mirror, reflecting the agony of the world with perfect, tragic clarity. But a mirror that only reflects others has no image of its own. When you look into it, you see everyone but yourself. This loss of self is not a sudden, violent event. It is a quiet erosion. It happens in the small moments. When you say yes to a friend who drains you, because their need feels more urgent than your exhaustion. When you absorb the anxiety of a room and mistake it for your own. When you spend your life untangling the knots in someone else's psyche, while your own inner world lies in ruins. You become a ghost in your own life, a caretaker for a house that is no longer yours. The danger, Jung understood, is that the ego, the center of conscious identity, requires boundaries to survive. It needs to know where it ends and the world begins. Without this distinction, it cannot perform its most crucial function, to mediate between your inner world and the outer world. When you are perpetually merged with others, your ego becomes weak, porous, and unstable. You lose the capacity for discernment, the ability to know what is your psychic material and what is an invasion from outside. This is why you feel so lost. This is why you feel so profoundly tired. You are not just carrying your own burdens. You are carrying the psychic weight of everyone you have ever tried to save. The river has forgotten it was ever a river. It only knows the salt and the storm of the ocean. You believe your empathy is pure light, a selfless gift offered with no expectation of return. But Jung would urge you to look closer, to turn your gaze away from the one you are saving and into the cavernous, unlit corners of your own soul. For here, in the darkness, dwells the shadow. And the shadow, he taught, is everything you are that you have no wish to be. Unchecked empathy is often a magnificent hiding place for the shadow. Your relentless focus on the pain of others can be a sophisticated, unconscious strategy to avoid confronting your own. You become a connoisseur of suffering, an expert in the wounds of everyone but yourself. This is not nobility. It is avoidance, dressed in the most beautiful disguise imaginable. Think of it. As long as you are immersed in their drama, you do not have to face your own emptiness. As long as you are fighting their demons, you can ignore the ones rattling the cages within you. This is the core of Jung's concept of projection. We cast out what we cannot bear to hold inside. In a twisted act of psychic alchemy, you take on the role of the healer to distract from the fact that you are the one bleeding. The shadow in your empathy contains a secret, desperate need. Perhaps it is a need for validation, to be seen as the good one, the strong one, the savior. Your identity becomes tethered to your usefulness. If you are not carrying someone's pain, who are you? The thought is terrifying, for it opens a void of non-being. So you continue to give, not out of pure compassion, but out of a terror of becoming invisible. Or perhaps the shadow holds a deeper, more primal wound, a feeling of inherent unworthiness. You carry the suffering of others as a form of penance, a subconscious belief that you must pay a debt for your own existence. You atone for your own perceived darkness by absorbing the darkness of the world. This is the darkest metaphor. A priest who confesses on behalf of his congregation. He hears their sins, absolves them, and carries the weight of their transgressions, all while his own soul remains unexamined. He becomes a vessel for collective guilt, so pure in his function that he forgets he is also a man with his own darkness to confront. Your empathy, then, becomes a performance. A beautiful, convincing, and utterly draining performance. You are playing the part of the saint to avoid the terrifying work of being human. Jung's challenge is brutal but liberating. What part of yourself are you exiling into others? What wound in you are you trying to heal by proxy? Until you can answer that, your empathy will not be a tool of connection, but a weapon of self-deception. There are those who will see the light of your boundless empathy and mistake it for the sun. They will come to you, not for warmth, but to burn away their own shadows in your fire. They are not always malicious. In fact, they are often deeply wounded themselves, fragmented souls who have not learned how to generate their own psychic heat. And so, they seek it from you. Jung understood the psyche as a dynamic system of energy. Every interaction is an exchange. In a healthy relationship, this energy flows in a balanced, reciprocal dance. But when your empathy is a wide-open gate with no guard, you become a source of psychic energy to be plundered. This is the chilling reality of emotional vampirism. It begins subtly. They tell you their stories, their endless litanies of pain and injustice. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your entire being. You absorb their anxiety, their rage, their despair. You offer them your presence, your stability, your light. For a moment, they feel better. They feel seen, validated, full. They leave the conversation feeling lighter, while you are left inexplicably heavy, drained, and coated in a psychic residue that is not your own. This is not a mere metaphor. Jung's concept of psychic energy suggests a literal, though unseen, transfer. These individuals, the perpetual victims, the narcissists, the bottomless pits of need, have an unconscious genius for finding the cracks in your boundaries. They sense your desire to heal, your guilt in saying no. Your shadows need to be the savior, and they latch on. They are not drawing blood from your neck. They are drawing life force from your soul. The visual is stark, hands dipping endlessly into a well until the water turns to dust. At first, the water is cool and plentiful. You give it freely, believing your well is infinite. You tell yourself it is an act of kindness to let the thirsty drink. But they do not just drink. They spill, they waste, they demand more. They never think to ask if the well is running dry. They are too consumed by their own thirst. And so, the water level drops. The coolness gives way to a muddy, desperate sludge. Finally, there is nothing left but dry, cracked earth. And when you can give no more, they do not thank you for the water you gave. They resent you for the dust you have become. They move on, in search of another well, leaving you hollow, barren, and staring into an abyss of your own making. This is the ultimate betrayal of boundless empathy. In your attempt to quench the thirst of the world, you have allowed your own soul to die of thirst. You did not realize that your energy was a finite, sacred resource. And you did not realize that some people will take all of it, not because they are evil, but because their own inner wells have long since collapsed. Deep within the collective unconscious, the soil from which all myths and stories grow, there sleeps an ancient and powerful pattern. It is the archetype of the martyr. When you give yourself away, piece by piece, in the name of love or compassion, you are not just acting out a personal habit, you are possessed by this archetype. You have become its vessel. The martyr archetype is seductive because it feels noble. It whispers to you of sacrifice, of purpose found in suffering, of a love so profound it is willing to be destroyed. You see yourself in the grand lineage of saviors and saints, those who bore the cross for the sake of others. This identification gives your pain a sense of meaning. It elevates your exhaustion to a sacred duty. But Jung knew that every archetype has a shadow. The light side of the martyr is selfless devotion. Its shadow side is a prison of self-inflicted suffering. The shadow martyr does not suffer for a cause, but because suffering has become their identity. Their self-worth is inextricably linked to the weight of the burdens they carry. To put those burdens down would be to face a terrifying emptiness. Who am I, if not the one who endures? This is the martyr complex. It is a psychological pattern where you unconsciously seek out situations that reinforce your role as the sacrificial victim. You are drawn to broken people, not just to heal them, but because their brokenness validates your purpose. You remain in draining relationships, not out of love, but because the pain feels familiar, righteous even. This noble suffering becomes a cage you have built for yourself, bar by gilded bar. You are both the prisoner and the guard. You tell yourself you have no choice, but the choice was made long ago, in the silent depths of your psyche, when you accepted the belief that your value is measured by how much you can endure for others. Trapped within this archetype, you lose the ability to receive. Love, help, and ease are met with suspicion. You have become so accustomed to giving that receiving feels like a transgression. It threatens the entire structure of your martyred identity. So you deflect compliments, refuse help, and isolate yourself in your quiet, noble pain. Even in a room full of people, the martyr feels alone. The ultimate tragedy of the martyr is that their sacrifice is often for nothing. They bleed out on an altar that no one asked for. They destroy themselves to save people who may not want to be saved, or who will simply move on to the next source of energy. Jung's haunting words echo here. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. For the martyr, this is the ultimate horror. To accept oneself completely would mean accepting the part that does not want to suffer, the part that has needs, the part that is worthy of love without first having to pay for it with its own destruction. It is easier to carry the weight of the world than to face the terrifying lightness of being. There is a profound misunderstanding that has been seeded into the soil of our culture. The belief that a boundary is a wall, that to say no is an act of aggression, and to protect your energy is a form of selfishness. You, the empath, have been taught this lesson most deeply. You have been trained to see your porousness as a virtue, and the act of defining your own limits as a moral failure. This is a lie. It is a lie that keeps you depleted, that keeps you in service to the endless hunger of the world, and that keeps you from your true spiritual work. A boundary is not a wall that shuts others out. It is the sacred circle you draw around yourself to hold your own divine energy in. It is the container that allows you to cultivate true, sustainable compassion. Think of this. A river without banks is not a river. It is a swamp. It loses its direction, its power, its life-giving force. It becomes a stagnant, murky bog where things go to die. Your empathy, your psychic energy, is that river. Without boundaries, without the banks of self-respect, self-knowledge, and the sacred no, it becomes a swamp of resentment, exhaustion, and confusion. You cannot offer clean, life-giving water to anyone if your own source is polluted with the psychic debris of everyone you have tried to save. Setting a boundary is not selfish. It is an act of profound spiritual integrity. It is a declaration that you understand your energy is a sacred resource, a gift from the soul that is not to be squandered. It is you, standing as the guardian of your own inner temple, deciding who is worthy of entry and who must remain outside. This is not about becoming cold or hard-hearted. The paradox is that true compassion can only flow from a place of fullness. When you are constantly drained, what you offer is not compassion, but a desperate, resentful form of people-pleasing. It is contaminated with the shadow need for approval. But when your own well is full, the empathy you offer is clean, powerful, and freely given, without the unconscious hook of needing something in return. The spiritual path is not a path of self-annihilation. It is a path of self-realization. You cannot realize a self that you have allowed to dissolve into the needs and dramas of others. Boundaries are the crucible in which that self is forged. They create the necessary psychic space for you to hear your own soul's voice above the clamor of the world. So let go of the guilt. The guilt is the chain that keeps you tethered to the archetype of the martyr. A boundary is you saying, I love you, but I will not carry you. It is saying, I see your pain, but it is not mine to fix. It is you, finally, choosing to honor the life that is flowing through you, so that you may truly and sustainably be a light in the world, not just a spark that burns out. The journey out of the swamp of boundless empathy leads to one of Jung's most profound concepts, individuation. This is the soul's ultimate purpose, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, a whole, distinct, and indivisible individual. It is the reclamation of all the lost pieces of yourself that you have projected, given away, or allowed to be consumed by others. For you, the empath, individuation is the journey home. It is the long, arduous, and sacred process of returning to your own psychic territory after years of living as an exile in the emotional landscapes of others. You have spent so long feeling what others feel, thinking what others think, and solving what others need solved, that the thread connecting you to your own inner self has worn thin. Individuation is the act of respinning that thread, of learning to distinguish the voice of your soul from the echoes of the world. It is the conscious choice to stop being a reflection and to start becoming a source. This process requires you to pull back your psychic energy. Imagine all the threads of your attention and care that are hooked into other people's lives, dramas, and wounds. Individuation asks you to gently, but firmly, unhook them, one by one, and anchor them back into the soil of your own being. This will feel like a betrayal at first. The martyr archetype within you will scream that you are being selfish. The world, accustomed to your endless supply, will accuse you of being cold. You must endure this, for you cannot meet another soul if you have abandoned your own. This is the great paradox of connection. We are taught that merging is intimacy, but Jung knew that true, profound connection can only happen between two whole individuals. Two people who have dissolved into each other are not in relationship. They are in a state of fusion, a codependent trance. But two people who have undertaken the path of individuation, who stand firmly on their own psychic ground, can meet at the boundary between their worlds. They can witness each other, honor each other, and love each other without erasing each other. The goal is not to become an island, but a lighthouse that guides ships but never leaves its shore. It stands on its own foundation, rooted in its own truth. It shines its light out into the darkness, offering guidance, clarity, and hope. But it does not chase after the ships. It does not abandon its post to try and fix their engines or patch their hulls. It remains. It is a beacon of sovereign presence, powerful in its stillness, useful in its unwavering commitment to its own position. This is your task, to return to your shore, to rebuild your foundation, to learn to shine your light without leaving your ground. This is the lonely, beautiful, and absolutely essential work of becoming yourself. You cannot truly see in the dark until you have become familiar with your own. This is the heart of shadow work, and for the empath, it is not optional. It is a matter of psychic survival. You have spent a lifetime drowning in the darkness of others precisely because you've been fleeing from your own. Jung taught that the shadow contains all the repressed and denied parts of ourselves: our anger, our selfishness, our fear, our vulnerability, our so-called negative qualities. You, in your quest to be the good and caring one, have exiled these parts into the unconscious. You have disowned your own rage, your own needs, your own capacity for saying no. But these parts do not disappear. As Jung wrote, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. This dense, unacknowledged shadow is what makes you so vulnerable. Because you have not owned your own darkness, you cannot properly discern the darkness of others. You mistake their storms for your own. When someone's unconscious rage enters your psychic field, you absorb it, because you have no relationship with your own rage to act as a boundary or a filter. You become a container for their repressed material because your own container is full of disowned parts. The empath's shadow work is a journey into the underworld of their own psyche. It is the courageous act of turning to face the very qualities you have spent your life pretending you do not possess. It means admitting that you are not just a vessel of pure light. You have darkness, too. You have resentment for all the times you gave when you were empty. You have rage at being taken for granted. You have a deep, selfish need to be cared for, to be held, to be saved for a change. Confronting this is terrifying. It shatters the persona of the selfless helper, but it is the only path to true strength. Jung's wisdom is clear. Real empathy flows not from the denial of the shadow, but from its integration. When you have faced your own capacity for selfishness, you can meet another's selfishness with understanding, but also with a firm boundary. When you have owned your own anger, you can witness another's anger without being consumed by it. This is the sacred alchemy. You must go down into your own darkness to find the strength to stand in the light. You must learn to hold your own demons before you can ever hope to help anyone else with theirs. So ask yourself, what parts of you have you sacrificed to be good? What anger have you swallowed? What needs have you labeled as selfish? Go to these exiled places within you. Listen to them, honor them, integrate them. Until you own your darkness, you will mistake other people's storms for your own. You have been taught that empathy is a resource that should be offered universally and unconditionally, like the rain that falls on both the righteous and the wicked. But this is a dangerous and draining philosophy. Jung's work, rooted in the preservation of psychic energy, suggests a more potent and sustainable path: the art of selective empathy. This is not a call to cynicism or cruelty. It is a call to wisdom. It is the recognition that your emotional and psychic energy is your most precious and finite resource. To pour it indiscriminately into every crack of the world's suffering is not heroic. It is poor stewardship of the soul. Imagine your empathy not as a flood, but as a scalpel. A flood is chaotic, destructive, and ultimately useless. It swamps everything in its path, making no distinction between fertile ground and barren rock. A scalpel, in the hands of a skilled surgeon, is precise. It knows where to cut, what to heal, and what to leave alone. It is used with intention, focus, and a deep understanding of the system it is working within. Selective empathy is the practice of becoming that surgeon. It requires you to move from a state of unconscious, reactive feeling to one of conscious, discerning compassion. You must learn to assess where your energy will truly make a difference and where it will simply be consumed by a black hole of need. This requires brutal honesty. You must admit that not everyone is ready to heal. Not everyone who asks for your help truly wants to change. Some people are unconsciously committed to their suffering. It has become their identity, their way of manipulating the world. To pour your life force into such a dynamic is like pouring water into a sieve. It is a waste of a sacred gift. This is where you must use your intuition, that deeper knowing that whispers to you beneath the noise of guilt and obligation. Your body knows when an interaction is draining you. Your spirit knows when you are engaging with someone who only wants to use your light to avoid their own darkness. You must learn to trust these signals. They are your internal guardians. Think of your energy as gold given to those who will not melt it down for coins. You offer your deepest presence and compassion to those who are genuinely on a path of growth. those who will take your energy and use it to build something within themselves. For others, you can offer kindness, politeness, and a firm, compassionate boundary. You can wish them well from a distance without inviting them into your inner temple. This is the maturation of the empath. You evolve from being a sponge, passively absorbing the emotional state of any environment, to becoming a conscious, energetic agent. You choose where to invest your soul. This doesn't diminish your empathy. It concentrates it. It makes it infinitely more powerful, for it is offered from a place of wholeness and intention, not from a place of depletion and unconscious need. We have walked a long and shadowed road together, from the blinding light of empathy's seduction to the underworld of the shadow and the sacred ground of the self. The journey reveals a truth that is both simple and life-altering. The greatest act of compassion you can offer the world is to stop abandoning yourself. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. Your depth of feeling is not a curse. It is a holy fire. But for too long, you have allowed that fire to consume you, believing that your destruction was the price of love. You learned to equate self-sacrifice with virtue and boundaries with betrayal. That story ends now. The path forward is not to harden your heart. A closed heart is just another kind of prison. The path is to learn to hold the key. It is to cultivate an empathy that is rooted in the unshakable soil of your own being. An empathy that can feel deeply without merging, witness pain without absorbing it, and care for others without losing sight of your own sacred duty to yourself. This is the final integration. The river learns to flow between its banks, powerful and clear. The lighthouse stands tall on its shore, a guide but not a rescuer. The candle learns that its purpose is to illuminate, not to melt into nothingness. You are here to love, but you are not here to be a martyr. You are here to become a whole, individuated soul who can engage with the beautiful, tragic, chaotic world from a place of strength, not from a place of wounded service. Your wholeness is your gift. Your boundaries are the measure of your self-respect. Your shadow, integrated and owned, is the source of your deepest wisdom. Do not be afraid of the loneliness that may come when you first begin to reclaim your energy. It is the silence in which you will finally hear your own voice. Do not be afraid of the people you may lose. Those who cannot respect your boundaries were never truly with you. They were with what you could provide for them. Stand in the center of your own life. Be the guardian of your own energy. Tend to the fire of your own soul first, so that its warmth may radiate outward, authentically and sustainably. Protect your heart, not by closing it, but by holding the key. This is your work. This is your power. This is the art of loving the world without losing yourself. Now, begin.